call this to order. I see that we're recording, so if we could all rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A roll call, please, Ms. Chichuli.
Mrs. Fryrick?
Here.
Mr. Posnow?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Sanders?
Here.
Mr. Scalette?
Here.
Mrs. Schrader?
Here.
Mr. Sears? Did he come in? Not yet. Okay. Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Tillman?
Here.
8 members present.
Okay, thank you. Please keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking. And this is our first opportunity for public comment. Do we have any comments?
We actually have no public comment at this time.
Okay, wow. Okay. And you have a link for the minutes of the regular monthly meeting of April 26, 2021. Unless anybody has any changes or corrections, I would offer them to be approved as submitted. And the board met an executive session in a virtual meeting format on April 27th, May 3rd, and May 5th, as permitted by Section 707 of the Sunshine Act, for the purpose of discussing matters of personnel. No official action was taken. As a notice, the Board of School Directors completed the superintendent and assistant superintendent's annual performance assessments for the 2021 school year. The superintendent and assistant superintendent met or exceeded the objective performance standards as specified in their contracts. And I believe that information is posted online. Coming up for the 25th meeting, we will have a recommendation for Mr. Chichuli to be appointed as the board secretary for a 2-year term beginning June 1st, 2021, as part of her responsibilities as the assistant to the superintendent for operations. We will also be recommending that Mr. Sears be appointed treasurer for 1 year beginning July 1st, 2021 at no compensation. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Posnow. I just want to share out my screen here quickly. Tonight we have the pleasure of recognizing 13 employees, teachers, support staff, who have given, when you add it all up, a total service of 3 centuries of time, with the highest number of years from one of those individuals being 41, and we'll get to that in a moment. But they're all significant people in our organization, and they will be missed. And what we'd like to do is share a little bit of information about each one of them. Dr. Krauser and Dr. Ketterman will be helping me out here with some things. Dr. Ketterman will be doing the elementary retirees. Dr. Krauser will be doing the secondary retirees, and I'll be doing the district-wide retirees. We have we asked them all a few things, and what you'll see on the next couple of slides will be some notions that they wish to share related to their time here working at York Suburban. Dr. Ketterman.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Williams. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you to all our retirees who are here. I'll just mention another thing as far as setting the stage. We have some retirees who are here with us in the boardroom, if you will, and we have some retirees who preferred and were more comfortable to watch it via the YouTube live stream. So like I say, some of them are here in the boardroom though with us, and we'll make sure to point that out when that's the case. So as you can see here in the slide in front of you, we did ask them to share a a memory or a fond reflection that they had from their years at Suburban, and also some parting wisdom. So we're starting our evening with Susan Anderson. And Susan has been with us, has been in education for 38 years, and 23 of those years were at York Suburban. She spent time here with us as a first grade teacher for several years. She spent a lot of summers teaching summer school. And then she has ended her career with many years as our elementary librarian. And she will be missed there. So what does she plan to do when she's finished? I kind of asked her what her next chapter involves. And she has some exciting things planned. She's going to be volunteering a lot. She has some family in DC, so she's going to be volunteering at the National Gallery of Art and the Smithsonian. She's going to be doing some traveling, both within the United States. She has a son down south, and she also has a daughter in France. So she'll probably be going abroad to visit her daughter in France. She also lives on a farm, so she's anxious to be spending some more time with her horses and training and riding, and she's going to be tending to her flowers and reading some more. Next on our list is Doris Eder, and she is the Yorkshire Night Custodian. She is actually here with us in the boardroom. Good evening, Doris. Thanks for being here. She spent here 6 years with us here at Yorkshire, at York Suburban, and all of them are at Yorkshire, and has taken great pride and care in her work every single evening, and really appreciates the opportunity to do what she can to help keep our children safe. So her next chapter, I love this, Doris is looking forward to riding her new four-wheeler. So you'll have to look for her out in the field, see if we can see Doris enjoying her retirement on her four-wheeler. Thank you, Doris, you will be missed. Next we have Lisa Eckenroad. Lisa is currently a first grade teacher at Yorkshire. She has spent 34 years in education, 28 of which were at York Suburban. During her tenure here, she taught 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And as I said, she's ending her year with us, having taught several years at first grade and at Yorkshire. She's also served York Suburban in a coaching capacity. She's coached soccer, field hockey, and basketball. She plans to spend her retirement time with her grandchildren, Braden and Brooke. She's also a certified personal trainer from the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and just might be developing a second career as a personal trainer. So thank you, Lisa, for all your years of service. Dr. Williams.
I have a great pleasure and with sadness to recognize Wendy Irwin, who was instrumental to me when I came to York Suburban. Wendy's been with the district for 41 years, started out a whole host of positions until she ended up in the superintendent's office, making sure that superintendents, whoever they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. So Wendy, thank you for that. Very instrumental. And Wendy is in the room with us tonight, as she is every board meeting night, working behind the scenes to make sure everything runs smoothly along with Vince. She was, sorry, I'm choking up a little bit. She's a treasure. She truly, truly is. And I'm very grateful to have known her. So thank you, Wendy. Thank you for everything you've done for me and for the district over 41 years. That's really significant. Dr. Krauser.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm the fortunate one to recognize Mrs. Lee Foy from our high school biology and chemistry class. She is with us this evening in the boardroom, and I see she's there with her husband too, so it is a family affair, which is great. And really, I think there's no other way to begin this conversation than when you think of science and you think of the high school at Suburban, you think of Mrs. Foy. 30 years in education, 18 at York Suburban, and has been transformational in our science program, touching the lives of countless students and teachers and colleagues from her strategies. At heart, she is an absolute scientist. She lives and breathes asking questions and inquiry and modeling that in her students. I've been fortunate enough to see her walking in the hallways with students in our new virtual way, where she's leading them out investigations. I've been fortunate enough to see her in the classroom where students are asking questions, and she models that. And you can see that, you know, her parting wisdom is teaching is more about the students than it is your content area. And that relationship that she has built for these many, many years continues to be something we see and hear from the students. One thing that Lee mentioned, I think as kind of emphasizing her love of science, is that this process and her retirement from Suburban just springboards into more questionings and more seeking as she hopes to search and find another job that will involve writing online activities for biology, chemistry, anatomy, or physiology, or certainly that important part of the field climate that we need to know in the world of literacy. So we thank Lee for her countless contributions to the Suburban High School and for all the lives that she's touched, and we're glad she's here tonight at Suburban.
And Natalie Hassan, who I don't believe is with us tonight, but Natalie was Pupil Services Director and retired in December. So she's been enjoying the retired life for about almost a half a year now. She has some parting wisdom, and which is really, really true. It's all about the student. Listening will be your best, most valuable skill. And she, as she mentions in her reflections, she did a nice job of getting families to trust her and trust special education, especially when they're new to the special education world, because that can be a very scary time for people when they're just entering that world. But she made them feel comfortable and earn their trust. So she has 35 years of experience in public ed, a lot of that time with the IU, the last 12 years with York Suburban. So thank you, Natalie.
Next, we have Heather Hoover. Heather is a first grade teacher at Yorkshire. She has spent 19 years in education, and 12 of those years were here with us at York Suburban. And all 12 of them were in first grade. She truly is an expert first grade teacher. She's also certificated in English as a second language. So she's been instrumental in forming some great relationships with our multilingual families and has brought some great teaching strategies to her teaching teams. And we're very grateful for all her hard work with all of her students. I know that Heather has some great plans for after retirement. She's going to be providing some care for her mother and spending more time with her son, volunteering and attending his sporting and band events. Heather, you will be missed.
Wayne came to us from New Jersey, where he was working in the plant services field in the public ed system there before deciding that he and his family decided they wanted to move to York, PA. So they did, and he became an employee at York Suburban over the last 6 years, and he has 21 years in education, as I mentioned, in New Jersey and here. And his words of wisdom, and he is here with us tonight, his words of wisdom are treat your coworkers with the same respect you would like to receive, and working together. He enjoyed working together with staff, and that is one of the reasons that the York chapter of Pennsylvania Public School Retirees has recognized him for his efforts, particularly as it relates to COVID mitigation in York Suburban. So Wayne, thank you for your years of service, and thank you for everything you've done for our students and staff.
Brian Marshall. Brian is our health and PE teacher at the elementary level. He's been teaching K through 5, both phys ed and wellness for the past many years. He's spent 38 years in education, 32 of them here at York Suburban. He's also been a significant coach in our district as well. He spent 10 years as a wrestling coach. He held first the assistant position and then the head coach position. And you can see that he mentioned some good victories there with both of his coaching positions. And then he's also spent 32 years as an assistant football coach. One thing that he intends to do upon retirement, he's going to continue coaching. So we're pleased to have him continue on with coaching football in the years to come. And also he says that he hopes to improve his golf game. So if you see Brian on the football field, in the years to come, make sure you ask him how his golf game's coming. Brian, thank you so much for your many years of service.
So the next person that we're celebrating tonight is Mrs. Karen Powers, with 23 years in education, 18 years at the York Suburban High School. And during her time, Karen served as a library administrative assistant. And I think, as many of us in education can reflect on, we've seen some tremendous changes. And Karen has certainly embraced that. Early years in the library, mostly at the high school library, focusing on circulation and working with students, to embrace and transition with the introduction to the Chromebook. Her roles have changed over the years, first with hard copy books and now with electronic books, as she's navigating Chromebook repairs and embracing each one of those challenges as she's moved. And by doing that at the heart of relationships with our students. So we thank her for her time and her efforts in that library, and doing great things to keep those students on par and on pace with each one of their classes. Karen did mention a few things she's planning to do as she enters the retirement. And most of it involves her children and grandchildren by traveling and visiting locations all across the East Coast, even as far as Colorado to visit. But she also will continue to do her love of gardening and knitting and enjoying a new e-bike that she has. So keep your eyes out on the rail trail for Karen as she is riding her way into that retirement with all the energy and excitement she's brought to our library upstairs at the high school. So we thank Karen for her years of service to the York Suburban High School.
Susan Robertson is next, and I believe she is here in the boardroom with us. Susan has spent 25 years in education, 21 of them at York Suburban. And during her time here, she's held several roles. She was a support aide for a while. She was a learning support teacher. And something that she didn't even put on her form, but there was a year that we certified her, emergency certified her in art. And she taught art for us, which just shows you how very willing Sue is to take any position and to serve wherever she is needed. And we're so appreciative of what she has done for us over the years. The majority of her years, though, were in teaching wellness and phys ed and health. We call it our wellness block. So, and the kids just absolutely love her. So as you can read too, that's absolutely where her passion lies. So Sue shared that she and her husband plan to travel and visit family more often in their retirement. She has 3 children and 3 grandchildren, and all of them live out of the state. So she's anxious to get to see them more, and also her mother, who lives in Florida. So they're really just looking forward to some quality family time. Susan, thank you so much for your many years of service. Again, you will be missed as well. Peggy Russell is also here with us in the boardroom. Peggy has served 25 years in education, and 21 of them were at York Suburban. I have a little personal story that I can tell about Peggy. Peggy first worked in banking, and when I first went into administration at Eastern York School District at Crates Creek Elementary, my first job was to hire an administrative assistant. And so the first administrative assistant, my first hire, was Peggy Russell, who came from the field of banking into the field of education. And then amazingly, we both survived that year. And then we both ended up moving to York Suburban. And obviously, education became a joy of Peggy's because she made it her career, as you can see. And as you see in her reflection, Valley View truly became her second home. You know, the elementary administrative assistant is such an important role because as an elementary principal, you don't have an assistant. There's no other administrators there. So when you're out of the office, when you're in a meeting, when you're not there, when you're with someone, your administrative assistant is truly your assistant principal, and they're making decisions and they're making sure everything runs well. And Peggy was just outstanding in her relationships with students, with staff, and with parents and the public. And so we just really, really appreciate everything she's brought to be the face of Valley View over the past 21 years. So Peggy plans to spend her retirement spending more time gardening and reading. And she also knows that she's going to be doing some traveling because there's many places in the United States that are on her bucket list. She's looking forward to being able to relax without feeling guilty, and in knowing that whatever's not finished today can certainly be finished tomorrow. And I love her parting wisdom as well, just to take a moment each day to enjoy the students because they are the reason we're here. So Peggy, thank you for your many years of service and for all you've done for Valley View. You certainly will be missed. And our next person is Kim Stoltz, Dr. Kim Stoltz. She's also here with us this evening. Kim has been in education 32.8 years. I love that comment. You can tell she works with little kids, right? Because like when you ask a 5-year-old how old they are, they'll say 5.5, because that half year is so important. So Kim has been with us 32.8 years in education. 24 of them were here at York Suburban. She's also held many roles here at York Suburban. She started with us as a 6th grade teacher. She also served as a reading specialist at the middle school. She was the language arts coordinator, K-12, for many years. And then she's spent the last 11 years as the Yorkshire principal. Kim's planning to see the countryside during her retirement. They're actually in the process of looking for the perfect recreation vehicle, and she and her husband have lots of family across the country, so they plan to visit family as they tour the country and visit all the national parks across the country. And Kim, you've really been the only principal at Yorkshire and really have developed a great foundation there. And just what a legacy you will be leaving. You will certainly be missed by everyone. And I think her personal reflection and her parting wisdom are just two things that we can just use to really wrap this up, really, for all of the retirees. The heart of what they've devoted their lifelong careers to is just all about loving kids. And so again, we thank you all, we admire you all, we appreciate all that you've done. Back to you, Dr. Williams.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our retirees, especially those who were able to join us tonight. We're very grateful that you are here to share in those experiences and to celebrate you. Thank you. Do any of our retirees wish to say anything? Don't be shy. Lee, you have to unmute there, Lee.
I will. I wanted to get permission before I unmuted myself.
You're such a good employee.
I just wanted to say thank you to the school board, and I wanted to say thank you to our administration and the students, the staff and the teachers. Teaching at York Suburban is something that is I feel very proud of, and we really have made an investment in educational excellence while focusing on the individual student. And I just want to remind all of you that it really is teachers that are the backbone of that initiative. And I hope that you continue to invest in good teachers for York Suburban. And I thank you for giving me a chance to teach there. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity.
Thank you, Lee. Okay.
Dr. Williams and John, can we take this moment for those who can unmute to offer a round of applause?
Sure.
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, and I think it's just amazing the amount of years of service, and with a common theme of students and student excellence. I think that just, it says everything about York Suburban and the family and what's really important. So that's incredible. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, retirees. Appreciate it very much. Please feel free to stay. I understand if you have lessons to plan or something like that. I certainly understand that. No one would fault you for leaving, but thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everything you've done for our students. Thank you so much. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Ad Hoc Committee Future Focus Planning Initiative with Dr. Krauser.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here a second. Okay. It is kind of an update phase of where we've been in the process. I hope to share a little bit of the details of where we've been moving since our last visit at our last board meeting, at the last board planning meeting. So if you recall from the very beginning, we introduced this concept of 3 independent processes moving together with a future focus in mind: learning, of course, our academic programming; sustainability, which is the fiscal lens; and the environments, which is our structures and our facilities. So kind of moving a quick review of where we are. We've continued to set that compass in the right direction by using our vision, our strategic principles, and our mission to help guide the steering committee of all 3 of these arms of our future focus lens, just keeping that at the forefront of our conversation as well as our teamwork. As I mentioned before, at the start of this process, we are looking through a systems approach to really focus on ways that we can reduce the barriers and provide access to equity or provide equity, which is providing access to all students on our academic programmings and through the system to inevitably reduce the need for supports or accommodations. So I want to introduce to you the members of the steering committee. This is the lead committee that represents teachers, administrators, student representatives, and parent and community representatives. This group is the group that's been guiding the work end of this steering committee. It is not representation of all of the community input and individuals that are involved, but this is the group that has committed those evening events, has been leading some of the work in the focus groups, and will continue to join us through some meetings throughout the summer as we begin to synthesize the data. And I just want to make sure we're giving a pause and celebration to each and every one of those individuals across the domains and divisions. So just to kind of review of our process to date, as I shared in the opening presentation, that our goal was to keep these 3 independent processes moving through the spring and into the summer to gain data, collect information, and prepare for feedback from the board and the community. And then as we move into September and October, these 3 future focused committees become one as we start to develop options and provide feedback, inevitably a recommendation to the board in November. What I would like to do is talk about the April and May work that we've been doing. And in particular, I want to focus on our future focused learning band of those 3 bands, which is our academic or educational programming. So what we've been doing through the months of April and May is going out and soliciting information and collecting data. So I'd like to just spend a minute about the data that we've collected so far. And we've done that in 2 different ways. The first way I want to talk about is survey collection. I'm going to introduce a couple terms for us as we get ready to look at this in a graphing sense to make sense of where we are. So I'm going to use the term recipient, and really what we're talking about that's a student, the number of students whose guardians received communication. When we think about, and I'll use Infinite Campus, IC, as our student information system. So if you kind of envision that as a wheel with a hub and spokes, we want to think of the hub as the student, okay? And they're going to have a variety of different connections from that single hub. So let's say, for example, student is in the household. They might have a recipient who is a stepfather and a mother, or a mother and a grandmother. So each one of those connective pieces to the student is going to be linked from the student end. So you're going to hear me talk about recipient, and then we're going to also talk about respondents, and that could be a variety of different pieces. The staff recipients are the total number of staff members who receive communication. That is school district employees, teachers, support staff, administrative assistants. Total recipient devices. So if we go back to the concept of the wheel and the hub, a student has a household. That Infinite Campus student is connected to a variety of devices in which we communicate, and we use the preferred method of communication that we receive from our families, that they prefer to receive communication via texting as well as email. So that may go to a variety of different devices, and we can track that data through devices. So that's an important piece we want to know. Opt-outs, the number of devices that were previously opted out of receiving communication. Families do have the ability to opt out of receiving communication from the school district, and there are families that do opt out of that participation rate. No selected device is a person who's not eligible to receive communication because inside Infinite Campus, that student who's the recipient may have no phone number or email, meaning a family has not provided us with any communication information that we can access them within our system. Survey respondents is the number of guardians or staff members who respond to one of the opinion surveys. So for example, if we're talking about guardians, we think of the one student, so as a recipient, one household may have as many as 3 or 4 respondents if it goes to a mother, a stepfather, or a grandmother, whoever's listed in that household. And then the last group that we're going to talk about is our focus group signups, and that's the number of guardians, staff members, and for this one we have some community members. Because the surveys were anonymous, we're not sure if community members are in there, but we do know community members are present in our focus groups. Now, they're not part of the Infinite Campus data push, but because we have been broadcasting this information on our website, because the information is shared with other community members, we are reaching other members besides the parents and families through this first survey process. So, the community future focused survey delivery and results. So the first column, the blue column, is our recipients, and that is our student body. So we said at the center of the spoke, that's the students. Now you'll say, okay, we have over 3,000 students in districts. You'll notice that that's because we do have families that have opted their students out, which is the red bar, which is that 456 students have opted out of that process. We have a total of 2,421 recipients. From that center hub, 6,580 devices were touched. So one family or one student recipient might have 3 or 4 devices or access points, an email address, a telephone number, and that's why you see a very large recipient device connection. And then 563 had no devices selected at all. Staff, 410 staff members received the communication to a total of 757 devices, 12 opt-outs, and 49 no device selected. So if we look at the participation, out of the 2,421 recipients, we had 283 survey respondents, and that survey respondent can be any one of those connected devices to that student and or family as it's connected to the recipient. From there, we also received 59 focus group signups. That involves secondary students, staff members, or excuse me, for this one, it involves community members as well as families. For the staff participation, we have 410 staff recipients, 102 respondents, and 17 members from the staff who signed up for the participation in the focus groups. So that was our data collection. That data is coming in. We're deciphering that data and sorting it out as we move through. And we'll be presenting that data at the next meeting in June, at the next planning meeting, which is a dual planning and voting meeting in June. And we'll be sharing that data information at that point. So I want to take a minute and dive in a little bit to the focus groups because that process is underway as well. We're finishing the collection of our surveys as we're also finishing the collection of our focus groups. So what we did was the steering committee in our first meeting, we took our large process or our charge of using those strategic principles and breaking down the 2 that are designed to learning as the 3 that are aligned to fiscal responsibility and breaking down those components into 5 focus themes. The focus groups are both based on the themes culture and climate, curriculum and instruction, student community engagement, equity, and structures. Each one of the focus groups is running 2 adult sessions. We're trying to accommodate as many of those schedules as possible. So we're running one daytime and one evening. Because of the low number of volunteers, there are some volunteers that are in multiple themes. So if a person had selected availability on more than one day or evening, they may have been selected for more than one focus theme, which is great because we're getting their insight on more than just one theme. Each theme, except for the structures theme, is running one student group in grades 6 through 12. So we have also 4 additional themes that are running with students, so we're collecting student data as well. I was actually at the middle school today. They ran a session there and had great feedback from the students, so that's in the process of being collected. just to kind of give you a timeline of this process to accommodate the families and our participants, our first session began in our structures committee with Mr. Henry and Dr. Monis facilitating the first focus group on May 5th, and the last session will run on May 21st. Again, there are 2 sessions for each group, so a total of 10 of those working sessions through the focus groups. We appreciate Dr. Sullivan's help there. The team and the steering committee had kicked off a series of focus questions and certainly used a little bit of his expertise in that process. And he was able to provide us some feedback, and we narrowed it down to some really great structured focus groups with some really important and guiding questions that we're soliciting feedback on now at this point. So kind of coming back then to our band, as I mentioned, the first part of the process we have been gathering is our future focused learning, where we're gathering and analyzing this information through the April and May time period. What I'd like to do now is move into the environments, which is the facilities discussion. At this point, we've been working with Crabtree Rohrbach, and this is still a work in process. They too are collecting data and analyzing that data. At this point, we're doing a variety of things. Elementary and secondary, we're engaging in building capacity and utilization studies. We've engaged in meetings with both the secondary administration and the elementary administration, and they're vetting out current usage of their building, room usage, program usage, academic usage, and we're sharing that with Crabtree Rohrbach Associates. At the same time, we're also analyzing the enrollment projections, and we're doing that in a kind of a dual experience. As you know, we have been collecting enrollment projections for some time. Dr. Williams has been kind of running some internal projections. We've had some projections done with prior studies, as well as some professional demographers. And Crabtree is running some current projections so that we can really investigate where those best line of fit will apply between PDE, internal projections, and Crabtree Rohrbach projections. At the same time, we're also investigating any planned developments within each township. Currently, as of right now, we have not yet heard back from Springettsbury, I believe, Springettsbury Township. Spring Garden has indicated there are still some planned development process on the books, so we're collecting that data as an integral part to that as well. The last, I'll say rather large part of the current stage of this data process that's occurring in late May and early June is our visioning exercise. We have been soliciting feedback or gaining participation in 2 different groups, an elementary visioning exercise and a secondary visioning exercise. That will involve the steering committee, 2 board members for each one of those groups. So we have 2 board members at the elementary, 2 board members at the secondary, and then we'll have a student group on each one of those as well. So the elementary visioning exercise will involve a group of adults with 2 board members and a group of students. And the same thing will happen at the secondary visioning exercise. Secondary exercise is occurring at the end of May, and elementary is occurring in the first week of June. So we're excited for that data to be collected. And again, that will be shared out at the June meeting. So again, that data collection piece. So kind of moving forward, what are the next steps? As I shared, we're getting ready for that June time period to give you an update on that process. On June 9th, the steering committee will reconvene, where we'll review the survey data that's been collected to date. We're going to look at the focus group information as well as the visioning and prepare for public presentation a June 14th survey presentation. So at that June 9th meeting, we're going to review and cipher that data and organize it into a preparation process that we can do later in the summer. So at the survey data we'll present in June. Then moving into July, we're going to provide an update to the board on the survey data, as I mentioned, the focus group, and the visiting exercise, kind of a culmination of all of those pieces together. And at that point, we'll be looking to seek some feedback from the board as we move forward. Moving into July and August, we're going to take that out to gain more feedback from our constituents, both beyond families of suburban, but hopefully community members as well. At this point, we're kind of waiting to hear where the restrictions will be from the governor. We're seeing some of those changes happen, so we're eagerly hoping that we'll be able to have more of a large-scale presentation that we can do maybe on either end of town, but try to get out to the community so we can reduce as many hurdles as possible to get them involved with the process and solicit the feedback and share that information with us. So that's kind of the process to date. That's our process moving forward. And I'll open that up to any questions.
Dr. Krauser, going back to one of the earlier slides, you mentioned a concept of equity.
Mhm.
Can you define that for me, please?
Define equity? Absolutely. I can.
And what it means to this process.
Sure. Well, the process for us from an educational perspective is we're assessing how access to resources, how access to experiences is being available to all students. So through the academic programming lens, at this point, that's how we're viewing that for the future focused learning part. How are we providing access to students, or how students have access to the academic supports, the academic resources, and the curriculum.
Okay, so it's a resource-driven thing where everybody has equal access to the resources, correct?
Correct.
We're not looking at equal outcomes, correct?
I'm not sure if I understand.
Equity is a term that is used in the national scene right now, which I think is misused quite often. We're talking about equality, not equity.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just highlight the definition that we're using that's from the Pennsylvania Department of Education.
Okay.
In Pennsylvania, in Pennsylvania, equity has been defined as every student having access to the educational resources and rigor they need at the right moment in their education across race, gender, ethnicity, language, disability, orientation, family background, or family income.
Okay, so it's a resource access.
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Krauser.
Thank you.
And Dr. Krauser will be back with us again next month to give us another update. Thank you for your work on that, Dr. Krauser. Also tonight, finishing up the superintendent's report, we have 2 administrative reports, the first of which is from Mrs. Jackson at the high school. And I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to start out by talking about the fact that last week we honored our teachers through Teacher Appreciation Week. At the high school, this included a luncheon for our staff and some t-shirts. And really, we can't thank our teachers and staff enough for their resilience, flexibility, and innovation throughout this unique school year. They've certainly made us YS proud. The end of the school year is fast approaching. This is actually our last week of a traditional bell schedule at the high school. Keystone testing begins next week. Kudos to Dr. Adams, who's navigated a very challenging schedule to ensure the administration of 3 Keystone tests. And also a shout out, of course, to our biology, English, and algebra teachers who've helped to prepare our students for success on these exams. Graduation plans have been finalized. Dr. Ellis has been working on these tirelessly for the last few months. We will have 2 graduation sessions on Saturday and Sunday for a total of 4, wherein our seniors can invite 6 guests to attend. And we do have plans to take those indoors if we need to. And our seniors at those sessions will walk across the stage. And then we have 1 session on Monday, pardon me, where the staff and the entire senior student body for the first time this school year will be together. And that will be more of a celebration for the students themselves and an opportunity for our staff to witness that. And finally, Dr. Adams, Ms. King, and I will participate in Leadership for Diverse Schools graduation on Tuesday at the JCC. Our sessions were very pertinent and timely and focused on many topics related to the diverse population of our county and our school district. As part of the program, our jobs were not just to absorb information, we also had to take action. Dr. Adams planned and implemented professional development regarding diversity and various related topics for the high school staff. Ms. King began the formation of the Hope Squad, which is a peer-led suicide prevention program she hopes to begin full swing in the next school year. And please look forward to more information about the Hope Squad in the future. And I worked alongside Dr. Kedeman and Miss Carol Brohart-Frymuth to begin planning and developing professional learning for content area teachers as they support English learners in their content areas. And we hope to continue this important work throughout the next school year. So Dr. Adams, Ms. King, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the administration for allowing us to participate in this valuable program through Leadership York. Does anyone have any questions?
Talk to us about the prom. How did things go at the prom? I mean, let's get real.
I didn't know if Carly was going to take that.
Yeah, I think you're probably
Just a little
stealing
bit.
Carly's
Yeah.
thunder here.
Yeah, let's hold that for Carly. Okay, thank you, Teresa. Also tonight, Dr. Manos from Valley View.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Good evening, members of the board. I am going to share my screen. And just walk you through progress monitoring tonight. Mrs. Fryrick, that it's not quite as exciting as prom, but progress monitoring, at least in this administrator's world, is paramount and exciting. So progress monitoring is not a new concept to education. One of the things I would like to show through my presentation is through COVID, we have gleaned that purpose and intent, if we really hone in and focus on whether it be curriculum, social emotional deficits, if we're able to diagnose and intervene, we are able to make gains and have gains come back. And I know that's been a big topic this year with students either coming in behind, falling behind, not quite sure where they are in this COVID era or this COVID year that we've had. So we used progress monitoring in Valley View to try to dive in at the classroom level to help some of those deficits. As I said, progress monitoring is not a new concept. If the words in education are new to you, allow me to just draw from the medical field and the mechanical field how progress monitoring fits, and then show you in the educational field as well. So for the medical field, you have a physical. You go there, you start talking, your body's not working correctly, the doctor's gathering information, the doctor gives a diagnosis, the doctor provides some treatment, and then over course of time, the doctor will progress monitor and adjust accordingly. That's progress monitoring. That's done by one doctor. In the mechanical field, you might have an inspection for your car. Car's not operating correctly. Either the mechanic, or now it's more computers, are pinpointing the error in the system. They are repairing that error, and then progress monitoring begins. Again, done by the mechanic. In education, we talk a lot about benchmarking. This is our litmus test. It's a dipstick of where we are in the year. We do it 3 times a year, beginning, middle, end. From those benchmarks, we're gleaning a sense of our students on a broad scale. So the skills within reading, identifying correct sounds, identifying correct words, the accuracy of words, retelling a story, those sorts of skills. Through the benchmark, we're able to pinpoint a concern. Let's just say a student isn't retelling a story very well. I put in parentheses to confirm with multi-measures, because I do know we hear rather frequently that data isn't the only measure. And I heard earlier Mrs. Jackson say that teachers are the backbone of what we do. Teachers are the backbone of what we do. Therefore, we need multiple measures. We may not just trust Acadians to say that the retelling isn't well. We'll check with the classroom teacher. How is that retelling? If the classroom teacher agrees, then we're going to intervene. And with that intervention begins progress monitoring. So there's just a look across multiple fields, just about how it's responsible to take that dipstick, learn where you are, and then start to plan where you're headed. Example in education with this graph. This is an Acadians graph, and I'm pointing out 2 things because I don't want you to fret or get confused by colors, numbers, and all the months listed below. We're looking at 2 areas. We're looking at a benchmark mark, which you can see we do 3 times a year. The end year benchmark's not in yet, but those darker colored circles are the benchmark. Progress monitoring data points are then not filled in dark. And you see those with these numbers. So these are, like we said, with the mechanic, kicking the tires, checking in, seeing how things are going with this particular skill. This dotted line that may jump into your vision every once in a while, this is grade level. So at this line is at grade level throughout the year. Below it is below grade level. A reading or math specialist may take a progress monitoring look at students every 2 to 3 weeks, but they have a caseload of 50 to 60 students. At a classroom teacher level, there's greater potential for purposeful progress monitoring that could eventually be shared with parents. I'm going to just toggle back quickly. Take a look at the cluster progress monitoring. Look across this span every 2 to 3 weeks. So we're kicking the tires. We're checking in with the student. This, in the second half of the year, we charged our teachers to do a more intensified progress monitoring. And you can see that through that, we're able to glean information at a more rapid rate and check our interventions at a more rapid rate. This was done at the classroom level, not a specialist level. Here are 3 scenarios to take a look at. The first one is the standard progress monitoring by a specialist. I just reviewed that, kicking the tires every once in a while throughout the year, keeping progress monitored on that child and that skill. This at the classroom level with purpose could turn into enrichment. Take a look at this, what this teacher, this student that the teacher chose to work with. This student was working above level. Ask administrators, ask educator, who are the most difficult students to gain 1 year of learning from beginning of the year till end of the year. It's some of your highest achievers. They're hard to grow. When I sat with this teacher, she decided to take a high achieving student and progress monitor and see how that worked for the student. And as you can see, we did see gains. Down in the lower left corner, this is a parent's dream right here. Imagine sitting down with a classroom teacher in March and having deficit skills, and instead of the teacher saying, we need a specialist, we need a specialist to look at this student, let's call in a specialist to look. What if the teacher said, and here's my thought bubble because here's the dream. What if the teacher said, no, before we go to a specialist, give me 1 month, give me 5 weeks, let me intensify this progress monitoring and see what our results are. In 5 weeks, we'll sit down and meet, we'll take a look at this graph, and then if we need a specialist help, we'll go that route. Again, board members, your parents, you sit down with our teachers. They are diagnostic in nature. I challenge that our profession is like the medical field and the law field. Therefore, we should be using ready information in the most purposeful way. So to summarize tonight, COVID has taught us purpose and intent. Before COVID, we were looking at specialists, progress monitoring students every 10 to 15 days. You saw that 2 to 3 week plotting of points. During COVID, we're surmising, this isn't definite, but a classroom teacher may progress monitor from the very beginning of a point of time, not the beginning of the school year, but the moment we see that deficit, a classroom teacher could start until the transfer skill is achieved. And that can all be done independent of a specialist. And finally, how might this translate into post-COVID? I shared with you teacher and parent communication where progress monitoring could be used at a deeper level with parents. Identifying and intervening with higher level learners to grow our highest achievers. And then purposeful intervention in a timely manner, wanting to finish again. COVID has taught us that our 7 hours are valuable, and with purpose and intent, we can achieve a lot in actually less time. Questions?
Any questions for Dr. Manos? All right. Thank you, Dr. Manos. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Appreciate it very much. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay. Ms. Chichuli.
Good evening, board members. We have several items in the business office report. And so I'll begin with item number A. The business office is requesting approval to solicit proposal for physician services. Currently, we contract with WellSpan Family Medicine. However, they're unable to make time to support districts. And so we're planning and we're hoping that through this process, we can find some competitive prices for the services that we need. So we'll be asking for approval to do an RFP.
Kathy, on that one, who are some of the prospective suppliers?
Well, we received one quote from Family Health Services, and their prices were a bit higher than what we currently pay with WellSpan. So we would be sending out, first we would be doing a survey with our local school districts to see who they're using to try to get a pool of physicians. And then we'll be handpicking some from the community.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. There are no other questions. I'll move on to item B. Item B is a contract for extended school year for New Story. New Story provides special education services to some of our students. So we're asking for board approval for the extended school year for 3 students from June 21st to July 29th. That's approximately 28 days at a rate of $375 per day per student.
Do we know how many students will be involved with this?
3 students.
Just 3, okay.
Item C, the high school is currently planning for their 2022 high school musical. And so the business office is looking to have the board approve the contract with Music Theater International for the rights to perform Swanee Todd, the school edition, of course, in March of 22. The cost of the rights is $3,630. However, the cost will be recouped through fundraising activities as well as ticket sales. Item D is a real estate tax exemption certificate for the parcel that you see before you. This exemption certificate is being approved under the Pennsylvania State Veterans Commission. We've had several so far, and this is adding to that pool. There is a veterans eligibility criteria that must be met, as well as the demonstrating evidence of financial need. This taxpayer has met the requirements for this program.
Kathy, do we know how many, do you know off the top of your head how many we have had this school year? We have to redo this annually, right?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I will check to see if it's annual. I could have sworn that there was a time period for which they're approved, but I don't know that for sure, but I'll have it for the next meeting.
Okay, thanks. Not a problem. Thank you.
Okay. Item E is a contract renewal. We've done this in the past with Robertson Detective Agency, and they provide security for some of our events. And there is an increase of $2.50 per hour. However, in researching prior year contracts, it does appear that the rates were steady between 2018-19 through 2021. So this $2.50 is probably due to inflation and the cost of doing business. Okay. Item F is approval of Erica Ferguson as a bus and van driver for Reliance Transportation. Item G, the business office is requesting approval for the service contract with the Pennsylvania Comprehensive Behavioral Health Services. This contract just outlines the terms and conditions of the agreement for both parties. BCBH provides behavioral health services, outpatient therapy, psychiatric care, support groups, and other services within the mental health field. And so on occasion, we would use them as a referral service. Item H is the child nutrition contract with York County School of Technology. This contract allows for our students participating at the York County School of Technology to participate in their meal program. And so we're asking for approval of that contract for 21-22.
We have to do that then with students coming into us from other school districts or whatever, you know, because of special ed or something like that?
We do not require them to sign a contract with them. We treat them as if they were one of our students. And so we would ask that parent to fill out a meal application of sorts. This is a practice that York County School of Technology has been doing. And so we're signing the contract as part of their our agreement with them.
As long as our children are benefiting, but just curious. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to item I, the 2021-22 breakfast and lunch prices. The USDA has approved the extension of the free meal waiver through 21-22. However, we are planning to serve free meals to all students. But we want to make sure that we remain compliant with the National School Lunch Program requirements, and therefore we are establishing the rates as we do every year. It's important to note also that there are some students who do not wish to participate in our free meal program, and so we will charge them the regular rate of the meal. Okay, item J, if you could scroll down a little bit, Wendy. Sorry, the business office report is a bit long. Item J is the annual approval of the district's depositories. We continue to use ACMB, which is Adams County National Bank, and PSLOF, the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund, as our main depositories. We have added First National Bank for tax collections. However, the tax collection is only until a tax collector is appointed. So this is only in the interim. Item K is to request to allow the business office to perform and prepare for the annual independent audit coming up in the summer. So that would include doing journal entry, budget transfers, and making sure that our books are clean before the auditors get here. Item L, M, and N, I'll speak to together. On May 25th, we'll be asking the board to adopt the 21-22 general fund budget. The budget is unchanged from the proposed final budget that was adopted in April. The total expenditures are projected at $63,374,502. This does include a budgetary reserve of $500,000. This budget includes a tax increase of 1.9% for a total of 24.0967 mils. The tax levies imposed for earned income tax and real estate transfer tax remain unchanged from the current year. On May 1st, PDE did release the property tax reduction allocations, which we know as gaming money. York Suburban's allocation is $663,736.43 compared to the current year of $663,444.26. And so this is an increase of $292. The number of approved homesteads is 5,323, an increase of 32 from the current year. And so we will be asking the board to approve this budget at the next meeting. Are there any questions on any of the items that I've spoken on?
Kathy, in number N, it has the resolution authorizing the distribution of the Act 1 funds. In number 4, homestead exclusion calculation, I think you got a number wrong, or you had in the second line you have $5,300 and some dollars, and that's the number of homestead.
Oh, did I put a dollar sign next to it?
Just so it reads properly and nobody signs off for it. Yeah,
Thank you
I thought that was
for that for
no
me.
problem. No problem. Thank you.
Kathy, what action are we going to take this evening?
This evening, there is no action on any of these items. These are for discussion only with board approval for the May 25th agenda.
So are you opening discussion now on L, M, and N?
On any of the items that we've spoken about, yes.
If I may, I'd like to revisit the impact of COVID on our cyber charter costs and some alternatives that we might consider for the final budget. Pre-COVID, as I understand it, we had 70 students in cyber school. The number increased significantly after the start of the school year. It's currently 116 if I read the report properly. But to keep the math more manageable, I'm going to use 70 as a baseline and assign 45 to what I'll call the cyber bubble. I'm using this year's tuition, and about 18% of our students classified as special ed. A weighted average tuition for these kids would be about $18,500 per student. Now, obviously, these numbers are not exact and they will change, but I think they give us enough to gain some insight into the situation. And as a result, excuse me, using these values, we're going to allocate something like $2.1 million in this budget to educate 115 cyber students, of which 832,500 covers what I'm calling the cyber bubble. Now, the most recent budget presentation reduced the number in the COVID bubble to 40, leaving a cost of roughly $740,000 in the 21-22 budget. Since each 1% of the tax increase generates, or each 1% tax increase generates $426,000, this cyber bubble would consume 1.75 percentage points of the proposed 1.9% increase. That's 92% of the increase. So I'd like us to consider a couple factors before we approve the budget and lock in the rate. One of those is that the cyber bubble really should not be viewed by the board as an ongoing addition to the budget. At some point, hopefully as soon as this fall, many of these kids and maybe some of those pre-COVID cyber students will return to a district operated school, either one of our brick and mortar schools or top. That would eliminate much, if not all, of the amount that's allocated to the cyber bubble in this proposed budget. So because of that, I recommend that we fund the cyber bubble with unassigned fund balance dollars, which we maintain for exactly this purpose: unexpected, non-recurring costs. Board policy has set a target fund balance of 5%, which we currently exceed pretty significantly. And we've done a good job, I think, in the past of recovering a fund balance that was essentially zero. I can remember one time on the board not that long ago, the fund balance was $200,000. And we've worked hard to bring it back up above the 5% projection, and understand that 5% is also a growing number in actual dollars. So looking at our current situation, we have about 7.7%, which is beyond our expectation, I think, pretty healthily. So here's a summary of some alternatives that would illustrate what we could do. If we stay with the budget as presented, we would allocate nothing from fund balance to the bubble. Our tax increase would remain 1.9. The fund balance would be $4,851,584 as shown in the budget, and that would represent 7.66% of expenditure, just below the level at which we cannot tax our citizens anymore. If we covered the entire bubble, if we took $740,000 from fund balance, that would require a tax increase of 0.165% to maintain the balance in the budget that's being proposed now. The fund balance would be reduced to 4.1 million, which is still 6.5% of expenditure, still well above 5%. If we funded half of the bubble, we could get away with a 1% tax increase, leaving a fund balance of 4.5 million, and that would represent 7% of expenditure. So what my suggestion is that we actually use the fund balance, because my sense is we really won't end up spending it. But if we raise taxes, we will not lower them. Once we raise the taxes, they're set in stone. If we decide to approve the budget and the tax increase is presented, we should also tell our taxpayers that we're using another permanent tax increase to finance a short-term problem, even though we've accumulated the funds, all of which are tax dollars, to address this type of expense without a tax increase and without depleting the fund balance below our policy guideline. Thanks.
So is there a motion in there, or do you want to do this when we do the real vote?
I don't think there's a motion, John, unless, I mean, I thought tonight was discussion.
Yeah, it is. I just want to make sure. So when we move in 2 weeks, then we have to be prepared to consider one of your options or where we are.
That's correct. And I would, if I could, shed some light on it, I would propose to use $740,000 to cover the cyber bubble, which essentially eliminates the tax increase.
Assuming that it really is a bubble.
Well, that's the problem, John, is that if it is a bubble, then this gives us the ability to handle it on a temporary basis. If it's not a bubble, then we can raise taxes accordingly with some experience under our belt, rather than looking at 6 or 7 months of experience to try to set in stone another almost 2% tax increase.
I guess what scares me is if it's not a bubble and we look at our current projections, the fund balance is going to be gone in 3 years. So what we're betting on here is that you're right, and that this is just a one-off that I'm not sure I believe.
I'm really concerned when we talk like that, because we can use that logic to say that just about anything that comes along as a contingency is really not a one-off. That every time we stumble, we're going to have to increase taxes to cover the current stumble plus stumbling indefinitely into the future.
I don't know if I buy that argument.
This is a response to an extreme situation. If you're suggesting that we should, as a board, that the prudent thing to do is to continue to fund permanently the reaction to a pandemic, I don't know how we run the district. How do we configure a district if everything that comes along has to be taken into account, not only for funding, but for physical rearrangement of our classroom spaces? We have close to $1 million now in top, and we're kind of suggesting through this conversation that we can't retrieve at least some of these cyber kids into our own program. I'm not suggesting that we do away with cyber altogether. I'm suggesting that we have an alternative that can help us dramatically reduce or even eliminate some of these external costs. And we spent lots of time and effort to try to build that capability.
Well, I would open it up to other people, so it's not just us going back and forth.
Thank you, I'm done.
Well, the incremental COVID expenditures are not the reason we crashed the fund balance in 4 years. They are one contributing factor, but they're not the whole reason.
So why don't we say that we're looking to put more money into the budget irrespective of COVID? That line item consumes practically the entire fund balance, Steve.
Well, I mean,
not the fund balance, I'm sorry, the tax increase. It consumes the tax increase. Money's fungible.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not just looking at this year. I mean, I think we have to look at where we end up over the next 5 years, 4 years, in terms of the moves that we're making right now. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to increase taxes, but I don't think that, but for the COVID incremental costs, we'd be looking at reducing taxes anytime soon anyway, because of the way the fund balance looks over the next 4 to 5 years. I get your point about it ratcheting up permanently, but I don't know that we'd have been in a position to reduce taxes for anybody in the next 4 years anyway.
It just seems short-sighted to me that we need to consider the fact that we have a big hole ahead of us. And if we are just thinking about this year, that's short-sighted in my mind.
Well, why don't we go all the way to 3.6 then, Lois Ann?
Well, you'll recall I did suggest a higher rate than the one we're going to be voting on.
I understand that. There's a point at which we have to rein this budget in. And we can't do that if we continue to increase the revenue and then pull the expenses up to consume it.
We've already eliminated a number of positions for this coming year. My concern is over time, we're just going to be eliminating more and more positions. And where do we draw the line in terms of impacting our educational programming? That's my concern.
I agree with that. And I think our concern is not just head count, it's program redefinition. It's taking a good serious look at how we deliver education. It's to a point where if we crash the fund balance, the question is not whether we'll crash it or not, it's simply when we're going to crash it.
So if
how do we solve, how do we
for
keep
a year, why not?
How do we keep from crashing?
Well, I don't think it's by taxing and having less revenue.
I think if we have revenue that's earmarked or allocated to a particular line item, and then we find that we don't need it for that, it's not a bonanza to the school board to fill one of these other holes. If that's the way we want to treat it, let's at least get on the record and tell the taxpayers that's how we plan to run the district.
Well, I sort of am on the record to say that, Joel.
Well, I know you are. When I say we, I mean we, the body. There's more to this than just moving year to year through these discussions and still watching the tax rates continue to climb as the deficit continues to climb, and we continue to have conversations about a footprint that we can't sustain.
But you're making the case. You're making the case for what you have proposed is short-sighted.
I think what I'm trying to do is use the money for what it's allocated. In other words, a fund balance is supposed to be used for temporary, non-recurring costs. If I'm off base labeling the COVID bubble as temporary and unexpected, then correct me. I don't believe it's a permanent condition.
See, that's where we started this, because I'm not convinced that it's not. With all the advantages that they're giving to cyber charter and charter, I'm not, even with the administration working as hard as they are to bring kids back, I don't know that it's going to happen.
Well, your crystal ball is a little bit more clear than mine is, Joel, because mine is really foggy about what's going to happen after COVID. And I don't think any of us can bet the farm on what's going to happen after COVID. We don't know that. That's your hunch, and more power to you. I hope you're right. But I don't know that I'm going to buy that.
So correct me if I'm wrong, if I could jump in here, but John, every year that I've done a budget, that I've been on the board, I believe your comment is, we do the budget and all of a sudden we end up building a surplus versus what we were expecting it to come in at. Is that not true?
I think I would say yes, but I would also say that we have a business manager now that has a pretty sharp pencil.
I'm
So
with you.
I am more confident in projections now than I have been in the past.
I'm confident in the next year. I'm not so certain about the next 3 to 4 years. I'm not saying that, she's right or wrong. What I am saying though is, I don't know. We got a lot of real estate transfers going on right now. We have a lot of moving parts here for us to make that prediction that we're going to so dramatically eat into this fund balance. And then I see things like this COVID bubble sitting out there. I don't know. The numbers look a little more compelling to me to keep the tax increases closer to flat than 1.9.
I think that as we move forward, the forecasting we're doing will refine, if that makes sense. I don't believe that in 4 years we're going to be in the horrendous situation that we project. There are a lot of moving pieces, but I also believe that it's not wonderful. That I think in 4 years we're going to be in trouble. I'm not sure that the amount of trouble relates to what we're modeling, but I'm more cautious than some.
If I may jump in here, Mrs. Chichuli, next year's budget includes some ESSER money, which is really one-time money. How much ESSER money is in next year's budget?
1.3 million.
1.3 million. So, Mr. Sears's point is well taken, and I would have a difficult time arguing against that. I also want people to understand that there's $1.3 million of one-time money in next year's budget that we won't get the following year.
I think that's a good point, Tim, but I think Mr. Sears brings up a very good point too, with a lot of numbers that I'm not staring at right now. And I think it's really hard, Joel, to necessarily agree with where you're going. In concept, it sounds good. I would like to see the numbers broken down so that we can look at them for the next meeting. Along with the ESSER money, I mean, I think we have definite one-time situations occurring with this. I do think that we're making a call with a very cloudy crystal ball. Either way, we can think it's doom and gloom. I don't think that crystal ball is right. I don't necessarily know it's going to be perfect and that we're going to get these people back, but we're making a lot of guesses, and I think we need to see some stuff in writing to actually look at and make a legitimate call in 2 weeks when we need to do that. So I appreciate you taking the time and digging into it, Joel. Let's get that stuff put together so that we have time to analyze it and look at it before we have to vote in 2 weeks.
Okay, we just want to make sure we're clear on what you're looking for here. You're looking for exactly what, Mr. Tillman?
I'm looking for what Joel told us, because my perfect recollection memory didn't trap all that while he said it. So I need it in writing. Just like when Mrs. Chichuli presents our budget, we see in writing what's going on. So that scenario that he's looking at, that bubble, if it's real or not, we need to be looking at that. We also need to be weighing in the fact that we have $1.3 million in not continuing money that is also factored into the budget, and be able to make a call on what the best situation is. I'm with, I do believe, while we have a sharp pencil in our business office right now, I do believe that we tend to overestimate what we need. And we've done that consistently for years. So, we have a lot of X factor here going on this year. I am a little bit of an optimist that we are not in the hole that we think we might be in. I appreciate that it's been focused for us this year because we do need to be thinking much more long-term than we usually have in the past. With that said, though, we need to look at this situation closely and make the call, because there is a one-time situation occurring here in a couple different areas. Put those numbers together.
Okay, we'll get those to you as soon as we can.
I think the other thing to consider is the budget we just closed out. It's hard to believe, but COVID actually saved us money because we didn't spend transportation. So the reason that the news was as good as it was for this year was that we didn't spend expected money.
Yeah, those transportation costs will be in this coming year's budget. We'll be expending that because we'll be going back 5 days. We anticipate that anyway. So, all right, well, we'll try to provide those numbers to you sooner rather than later, so you have some time to digest them in preparation for the upcoming meeting.
That concludes the business office report.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bowen, give us some good news.
Hi, everyone. Well, I don't have too much to report tonight, but like Ms. Jackson said, Keystone testing is next week at the high school, and I think students are eager to get this year wrapped up with. And what everyone's so excited to hear about, prom was last week on Friday, and it was a huge success. Although it was outside during a relatively cold and rainy night, we were under a large tent and everyone still enjoyed themselves very much and were able to keep warm from dancing around. I've heard great things from those who went, and I think everyone was very happy to have something normal this year. And with that being said, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. And you have a link to the committee meeting schedule online. And Mr. Robinson, personnel.
Let me repeat. Thank you, Mr. Posnell. You have before you the personnel report, which includes employment, resignations, retirements, and salary matrix revision. Would any board member like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items? If not, the chair moves approval of the below mentioned items.
Mr. Robinson.
Second before you.
Sorry.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Now go ahead, Ellen.
Okay, under employment, I will be voting against that, so I'd like that pulled out separately, please. I'm not voting against this person, I'm voting against the position.
Of course. Let me withdraw my motion and submit a revised motion excluding item 1.
Second.
I'll second it.
We have
Wait.
That's not the right thing.
That's not right.
Okay, it's not right.
You want to make a motion having a consent agenda, but excluding item AII.
Correct.
Forgive me, I read it as 1 instead of I.
So it's II.
II.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Then this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
And now, just to make sure I'm observing proper procedure, I'm moving item AII. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I would just repeat that I am doing this because I don't think that it is appropriate at this time, much the way I did when we added an assistant business manager to add this position to the staff at the central office.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Julie, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Tillman,
Yes.
Mrs. Schrader,
Yes.
Mr. Posnell,
Yes.
Mr. Sears,
Yes.
Mr. Scalat,
Yes.
Mrs. Fryrick,
No.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And we do actually have Adele Campbell here with us, so I would just welcome her.
Hi.
Well, thanks a lot, Vince. I was going to say that first, but let me be second to welcome you.
Well, I spotlighted her, so I wanted to make sure while we had her spotlighted.
Yeah, I feel like my face couldn't be any redder right now, I suspect. But thank you.
Welcome.
Going to be a fun year.
Thank you.
And now that we've embarrassed Dr. Campbell enough, I believe we have a few more items to consider. Going down to number 3, items recommended for discussion with anticipated action on May 25th. Shall I read these? He repeated, shall I read these?
No, just give us a couple of minutes. I don't think you need to read them aloud.
Okay.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but
Well, once you've read them, I do have a suggestion.
what is your suggestion?
That item 3D be moved to a special meeting of the Personnel Committee to give this matter the review and discussion it merits.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion about that? Then I guess this can be a unanimous roll call vote that we will table item 3D back to personnel.
Thank you very much. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Tolman.
The Policy Review Committee has 8 proposed policies before the board. This is our last read before anticipated adoption at the May 25th meeting. Are there any questions on any of these policies? Hearing none, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Legislative update, Mr. Robinson, you're back.
Thank you, Mr. Posnell. Apropos of our discussion about the budget and the cyber bubble, the buzz in Harrisburg has to do with charter reform these days, and apparently it's an issue that's getting a lot of attention in the hallowed halls of the state capitol, which is leading some of our friends at PSBA to urge us as a board and as individuals, as a community, to contact our local representatives to outline the challenges that charter and cyber charter tuition pose to our district. In addition, there's some concern that some of our legislators may feel that the infusion of federal dollars is a short-term fix that's going to pose a solution to all of our long-term problems. And this might be an opportune time to disabuse them of that notion, because I think we're all agreed that that's not the case. And finally, last week, Mr. Posnell asked me for a more detailed definition of vexatious from the Latin vexare. Legally, it means a legal action brought to harass an adversary through vexatious or frivolous litigation. First used officially in 1541 during the reign of Henry VIII. If there are no questions, that concludes my report.
And that's going to be in the minutes, right? So I can go back and read it.
I hope not.
Jeez.
Ms. Frerick.
Mine's a lot easier, a lot less educational maybe. Lincoln Intermediate Unit, you have before you the Dawn's Early Light, which is the minutes and highlights of the LIU board meeting of May 4th. They are rather interesting from time to time. I hope you take the time to glance at them. There is no report from the Joint Operating Authority. Our meeting is next week. Moving right along to York Adams Academy, I'm pleased to announce that we last week had a special meeting and we hired Ruth Ackerman as the new director on or about July 1st. We are thrilled to have Ruth with us and to continue our work at York Adams Academy. You also have before you the board briefs of our meeting of April 27th. If anybody has any questions or concerns, please let me know. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. York Adams Tax Bureau, Ms. Chichuli.
No report.
Thank you. York County School of Technology, Ms. Schrader.
Yes, in a similar fashion, I'd like to encourage all of you to review the mini board report that's linked on our agenda. Always interesting things going on at the School of Technology. One thing I would like to highlight, just so that everyone is aware, Dr. Scott Dicely from Red Lion has agreed to continue for the next school year as our superintendent of record. So we're happy that he's agreed to do that. Unless there are questions, that would conclude my report.
Okay, thank you. All right, I would like to thank all of our visitors online staying with us. There's a link to our board meeting schedule, and this would be the last time for public comment, if there are any events.
We have no additional public comment.
Okay. In that case, if there is no other issues that anybody has, I could say we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.